Imagine walking into a room and suddenly feeling the air shift, not because anything bad happened, but because your presence alone made someone uncomfortable. You didn't insult them, you didn't take anything from them, you didn't even look their way. Yet they glare, they whisper, or worse, they smile at you with words that don't sound quite right. Words that carry a sharp edge hidden behind a soft tone. And you wonder why? Why does success, progress, or even just happiness trigger people this way? Here's the truth. Not everyone hates you, but some people cannot stand to see you grow beyond what they thought was possible for you. Jealousy doesn't always show up as anger. Sometimes it dresses itself up as advice, concern, or even a compliment. But if you listen closely, you'll notice patterns. Certain phrases that jealous people use again and again. They sound harmless on the surface, but deep down they're meant to discredit you, to make you doubt yourself, and to keep you small. And that's what we're going to uncover today. The exact words jealous people always say, their hidden messages, the traps they set with language, and most importantly, how you can recognize them, rise above them, and never let them touch your spirit. Because the goal isn't to fight jealousy. The goal is to understand it so deeply that when it shows up, you don't react. You simply rise higher. Now let's decode those words that reveal the truth about people's jealousy. You got lucky. Those 3 words have probably been thrown at you at some point in your life. Maybe it was after you landed a job you worked months preparing for. Maybe it was when you bought something you'd been saving up for. Or when you finally hit a milestone you'd been chasing for years. And yet instead of someone acknowledging your effort, your discipline, your sacrifices, they casually dismissed it with, you got lucky. Now let's break that down. Why would someone say that? Luck implies that you just stumbled into success by accident. Luck erases the late nights you spent grinding, the weekends you gave up, the doubts you had to push through. Luck reduces your journey into a coin toss, as if you simply happened to be at the right place at the right time. It's a way for jealous people to protect themselves, because if they admit you worked harder, stayed more disciplined, or pushed past more fear than they did, then they're forced to confront their own lack of effort. And most people don't want to do that. It's much easier to say you got lucky than to say you outworked me. Think about it. When someone calls your success luck, what they're really saying is, I don't want to believe that you earned it, because then I'd have to admit I could have earned it too, but I didn't. It's not about you. It's about them refusing to take responsibility for their own choices. And here's the dangerous part. If you're not careful, you might start to believe them. You might start to wonder, was it really luck? Maybe I just happened to be there at the right time. Maybe I don't deserve this. That's the trap. Jealous people plant that seed of doubt in your mind, because if you water it, if you start believing it, you'll stop aiming higher. You'll shrink down to their level. But let's be honest, was it really luck that made you show up when everyone else stayed home? Was it luck that made you keep trying after you failed 5 times? Was it luck that pushed you to study harder, to practice longer, to put in the hours when nobody was watching? No, that's not luck. That's discipline. That's resilience. That's persistence. Now sure, sometimes timing does play a role. Sometimes the door opens at just the right moment. But here's what jealous people never want to admit. Opportunity doesn't matter if you're not prepared to walk through it. Plenty of people get chances. Only the prepared ones turn those chances into lasting success. If you were in the right place at the right time, it wasn't luck. It was strategy, preparation, and persistence that put you there. Let me give you an example. Imagine 2 students studying for an exam. One spends weeks preparing, going over notes, doing practice problems, staying late after class to ask questions. The other barely studies at all, but shows up on test day, expecting to somehow pull it off. Now, when the first student gets an excellent grade, what do you think the second one will say? Wow, you worked so hard, you deserve it. Maybe. But more likely, it'll be, you're lucky you got the easy questions. Or, you're lucky you're naturally smart. No acknowledgement of the hours invested, no recognition of the effort, just an easy excuse, luck. Jealousy always looks for shortcuts to explain away someone else's results. It's too painful for some people to admit that you might simply want it more, that you might be willing to go where they're not, that you might carry a kind of discipline they refuse to develop. So they'll tell themselves, and they'll tell you, that it was luck. That way they don't have to feel bad about their lack of effort. So what do you do when you hear this? Do you argue? Do you try to prove how hard you worked? No. Never waste your energy justifying your success to jealous people. Because here's the thing, you don't owe anyone your story. You don't have to explain your sacrifices, your sleepless nights, or your years of struggle. People who genuinely want to celebrate you don't need explanations. And people who are determined to minimize you won't believe them anyway. The best response to you got lucky is not defensiveness, it's more success. Keep moving, keep growing, keep building. Let them keep calling it luck while you keep proving its work. Because eventually your consistency becomes undeniable. Luck doesn't happen again and again. Luck doesn't sustain results year after year. Hard work does. And here's the secret. When people say you got lucky, it's actually a sign you're doing something right. Think about it. Nobody accuses the average person of being lucky. Nobody looks at mediocrity and says, wow, you're so lucky. That comment only comes when you've done something noticeable, something they can't ignore, something they wish they could have achieved themselves. So the next time you hear you got lucky, reframe it. Don't hear it as criticism, hear it as confirmation. It's proof that your work is showing. It's proof that you've reached a level where your success feels unbelievable to someone else. But let me leave you with this thought. Luck might open one door, but it never keeps it open. You walking through it, you building what comes next, you creating momentum, that's not luck. That's you. So don't let jealous people trick you into minimizing your own journey. Don't let them strip away your credit just to soothe their own insecurity. Own your work, own your discipline, and let you got lucky become the background noise you walk past on your way to the next level. It's not that big of a deal. At first glance, it sounds harmless, almost casual. But when those words come from the lips of someone staring at your accomplishment, you know exactly what's happening. They're trying to shrink what you've built. They're taking something that cost you sweat, sacrifice, and time and reducing it into something small, forgettable, and ordinary. And if you're not careful, those words can cut deeper than insults because they don't attack you directly. They attack your sense of pride in what you've earned. Think about how powerful that phrase really is. Imagine spending months working on a project, putting in long hours, doing things no one else sees, missing events, saying no to distractions, holding yourself accountable every single day. And then when you finally achieve it, when you finally get to share it, someone shrugs and says, it's not that big of a deal. That's not just dismissal. That's an attempt to rob you of the joy you've rightfully earned. Here's the truth. People who dismiss your achievements aren't making a statement about your success. They're making a statement about their inability to celebrate it. When someone says it's not a big deal, what they really mean is, I can't handle the fact that you did something I didn't do. They don't want to feel small in your presence, so instead of stepping up, they try to pull you down. They figure if they can convince you it's not impressive, then they won't have to deal with the discomfort of your growth. And notice how it always shows up in subtle ways. You buy your first car, and instead of congratulations, someone says, it's just a used car, not a big deal. You graduate, and someone reminds you, millions of people graduate every year, it's not that special. You get a promotion, and they mutter, it's not like you're the CEO, relax. Every one of those comments is meant to chip away at your self-worth, to make you question whether your achievement is worthy of celebration. But here's what they'll never say out loud. Your small achievement threatens them. Because if you can celebrate something they dismiss, it means you're willing to value progress, no matter the size. And people who don't value their own small wins will never move forward. They sit in the same place, bitter, waiting for something big before they allow themselves to be proud. But you understand that every milestone matters. You know that the small steps are what build the big leaps. Let's take an example. Imagine someone running their very first mile after months of struggling to even get off the couch. For them, that 1 mile is a massive achievement. It's proof of discipline, proof of growth, proof of pushing beyond comfort. Now imagine someone on the sidelines saying, it's not that big of a deal, I can run 10 miles. Do you see the problem? The person running 10 miles may have more endurance. But that doesn't erase the fact that the other person just crossed a huge personal milestone. Dismissing someone else's achievement says more about the speaker's lack of empathy than the achiever's worth. And here's the danger. You might start to absorb that dismissal. You might start thinking maybe it really isn't that big of a deal. Maybe I shouldn't be proud. Maybe I shouldn't celebrate. That's how jealousy wins. It convinces you to shrink yourself so that others feel comfortable. It conditions you to undervalue your progress so they don't have to face their own stagnation. But let me tell you something. Every achievement is a big deal. Every step forward is a victory. The first dollar you earn, the first book you finish, the first time you break a bad habit, all of it matters. Because every one of those moments proves that you're capable of growth. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is speaking from their insecurity, not from truth. So how do you handle it when someone says, it's not that big of a deal? You don't argue. You don't beg them to see it your way. You don't list out the effort it took or the sacrifices you made. Because here's the secret. You don't need their validation. You don't need their applause to know your worth. Instead, you celebrate anyway. You clap for yourself. You honor the progress you've made, whether others recognize it or not. Because confidence doesn't come from the size of the achievement. It comes from your ability to value it, no matter how anyone else frames it. And let's flip the perspective. People who dismiss achievements often live their lives waiting for something big enough to finally feel proud of. But here's the irony. If you can't celebrate small victories, you'll never truly appreciate big ones either. Gratitude and recognition are muscles. If you don't practice them on the little wins, you won't magically feel them when you hit the massive milestones. That's why some people achieve great things and still feel empty, because they train themselves to dismiss progress. You're not going to fall into that trap. You're going to recognize that every step forward matters. You're going to celebrate the moments others overlook. Because when you do, you build momentum, you build confidence, and you build the inner strength to keep going. So the next time someone shrugs and says it's not that big of a deal, smile. Because what they're really saying is, I can't understand how you keep moving forward while I stay stuck. Let their dismissal remind you of why you must keep going. Let their words fuel your fire instead of dimming it. Because you don't need their permission to be proud of yourself. Here's the truth. They're right about one thing. To them, it's not a big deal. But that's because it wasn't their battle, their sacrifice, their journey. It was yours. And that makes it priceless. Must be nice. At first, those words sound like a compliment. They sound like admiration, even a little curiosity about what you've accomplished. But listen closely. The tone is different. The way the words roll off their tongue isn't admiration. It's bitterness wrapped in sarcasm. It's envy disguised as interest. When someone says must be nice, what they're really saying is, I resent the fact that you have something I don't, and instead of being happy for you, I'm going to cover my jealousy with a fake smile. Think about the last time you heard it. Maybe you bought something new, like a car, and someone said must be nice. Did it feel like a genuine compliment, or did it sound like a jab, as if your success was somehow unfair? Maybe you went on vacation after months of saving and working hard, and someone muttered, must be nice. On the surface it's just 3 words, but beneath them lies a heavy implication. They're not happy for you. They're bitter that you did what they couldn't, and they're trying to make you feel guilty for it. Jealous people love this phrase because it gives them cover. They can't outright say, I'm envious of you, so they mask it in language that sounds almost harmless. But that bitterness slips through, doesn't it? You can feel it, you can see it in their body language, the way their eyes linger, the way their smile doesn't reach their eyes. Must be nice is not about celebrating you. It's about subtly reminding you that your progress bothers them. But let's dissect it further. Why do they say this? Why not just keep quiet? Because jealousy is uncomfortable. It forces people to confront the gap between what they want and what they're willing to do. When they see you achieve something, it's a mirror. It reflects back the sacrifices they didn't make, the risks they didn't take, the hours they weren't willing to put in. Instead of owning that, they point at you and minimize your success with a sarcastic remark. Must be nice is their way of saying, I want what you have, but I don't want to do what you did to get it. Here's the catch. If you're not careful, you might take it personally. You might feel a sting of guilt when they say it. You might think, maybe I shouldn't share my success. Maybe I should downplay it. Maybe I should hide what I've worked for so others don't feel bad. That's exactly what jealous people want. They want you to shrink. They want you to feel guilty for having what they don't. Because if they can make you apologize for your own success, they don't have to face the truth about their lack of effort. But why should you apologize for what you've earned? Why should you feel guilty for your discipline, your resilience, your sacrifices? That vacation, that promotion, that new opportunity, it didn't just fall into your lap. It came because you worked for it. It came because you were willing to keep going when others stopped. If they're jealous, that's not your burden to carry. Their bitterness is their problem, not your responsibility. Let's use an example. Imagine 2 people working in the same office. One stays late, puts in extra hours, learns new skills, and eventually earns a promotion. The other does the bare minimum, never goes the extra mile, never invests in growth. When the first person gets promoted, guess what the second says? Must be nice. Notice how that phrase skips over all the effort. It ignores the nights spent working, the stress, the dedication. It makes it sound as if the promotion was handed out as a random gift. But deep down, both people know the truth. The promotion was earned. The bitter comment was just a cover for jealousy. This is why it's important to not absorb the energy behind those words. Because if you let must be nice sink in, you start to hesitate. You start to hide your wins, fearing they'll upset others. But here's the reality. You don't exist to make jealous people comfortable. You don't work hard just to keep your progress invisible. Your success should inspire, not shrink. And if it makes someone uncomfortable, that's a sign they need to do more with their own life, not that you need to do less with yours. In fact, let's flip the meaning. The next time you hear must be nice, recognize it for what it really is, a backhanded compliment. They're not saying it's not impressive, they're saying it's so impressive that they can't ignore it. They're not saying it's ordinary, they're saying it's so extraordinary that it triggers their insecurity. In their own bitter way, they've just confirmed that you've reached a level they can only dream of. That's not an insult, that's validation. But here's the key, you don't need to respond with anger. You don't need to clap back or explain yourself. The most powerful response to must be nice is calm confidence. You simply smile because you know the truth, you know the hours, the sacrifice, the resilience behind your achievement. You don't need their approval to validate it. Their bitterness is proof enough that you're on the right track. And remember this, people who are genuinely happy for you will never make you feel guilty for your success. They'll say things like, "That's amazing, I'm so proud of you," or "You worked hard, you deserve this." Those are the people you keep close. Those are the ones you celebrate with. The ones who say "must be nice." You don't hate them. You don't fight them. You simply recognize their words for what they are, jealousy in disguise, and you keep moving forward. Because at the end of the day, "must be nice" doesn't define you, it defines them. It reveals their mindset, their limitations, their insecurities. And as long as you keep building, as long as you keep growing, they'll keep talking. Let them. Their words don't slow you down. If anything, they prove you're moving fast enough to stir envy in those standing still. So the next time you hear "must be nice," don't take it as bitterness. Take it as confirmation. Confirmation that you're living a life that others notice. Confirmation that your hard work is showing. Confirmation that you've built something enviable. Because yes, it is nice, and you earned every bit of it. "I could have done that too if I wanted." Those words might sound casual, but they carry one of the most dangerous forms of jealousy, excuses disguised as equality. On the surface, the person saying it pretends they're on your level. They want you to believe that what you achieved isn't unique, that if they had chosen to, they could have done the exact same thing. But underneath, those words reveal the truth. They didn't do it, they wouldn't do it, and deep down, they know they couldn't sustain what it takes to get there. Think about what this phrase really means. It's a way for jealous people to protect their ego. If they admit you worked harder, sacrificed more, or persevered longer, they'd have to face the uncomfortable truth that they didn't. They'd have to look in the mirror and acknowledge that they didn't push themselves when they had the chance. That's painful. So instead of owning their choices, they create a fantasy version of reality. "I could have done that too, if I wanted." Notice the loophole, it's always hypothetical. They didn't do it, but supposedly they could have. This phrase shows up everywhere. You get a degree, and someone shrugs, "I could have done that too if I wanted, but school just isn't my thing." You start a business and they mutter, "I could have done that if I wanted, but I just don't care about money like that." You hit the gym, transform your body, and they say, "I could look like that if I wanted, but I don't have time." Every time, it's the same pattern. Jealousy masked as nonchalance, excuses masked as superiority. They don't want to admit that your success required more courage and commitment than they were willing to give, so they rewrite the story in a way that makes them feel equal without doing the work. But let's get real. If they could have done it, why didn't they? If it was so possible, so easy, so within reach, what stopped them? The answer is simple. They didn't want it enough. Because anyone who has truly wanted something knows that desire comes with sacrifice. To graduate, you have to put in years of studying. To grow a business, you have to endure sleepless nights, failures, and setbacks. To transform your body, you have to sweat, suffer, and stay consistent when it's easier to quit. These are not things you could do casually. They're things you either commit to or you don't. And the ones who say, "I could have done that too if I wanted," are really saying, "I wasn't willing to do what it takes." Here's where it gets dangerous. If you're not grounded, you might start to believe them. You might hear someone say, "I could have done that too," and think maybe they're right. Maybe what I did isn't that special. Maybe anyone could have done it. That's the trap. Jealous people want you to believe your success is ordinary, that it doesn't set you apart. But the truth is, very few people have the discipline, consistency, and courage to do what you've done. If it were so easy, if it were so common, then everyone would be doing it. And they're not. That's proof enough. Let me give you a story. Imagine two friends in high school. Both dream about starting a business one day. Years later, one actually starts it. They face rejection after rejection, stay up nights trying to figure it out, fail a few times, and finally build something that works. The other friend? They talk about ideas, but they never execute. When they see their old friend succeed, they say, "I could have done that too if I wanted." But here's the truth. They didn't want it badly enough. They liked the idea of success, but not the grind. They liked the dream, but not the sacrifice. So they convinced themselves it's not that impressive, because that's easier than admitting they wasted their own potential. And here's something important. You can't let their excuses become your guilt. It's not your responsibility to shrink your success to make them feel better about their lack of action. Their words are not proof of their potential. They're proof of their regret. They're telling you a story to cover up their disappointment in themselves. And if you internalize that, if you start to feel guilty for what you've earned, you'll stop pushing. You'll start playing small so they don't feel threatened. That's how jealousy wins, by convincing you to dim your light. But you have to remember, not everyone can do what you did. Not because they don't have the ability, but because they don't have the drive. Plenty of people have talent. Plenty of people have intelligence. But only a few have the resilience to keep going when it gets hard. And that's what sets you apart. Your achievements aren't hypothetical. They're real. They're words, just smoke and mirrors. So how should you respond when someone says, "I could have done that too if I wanted"? You don't argue. You don't try to prove the blood, sweat, and tears you put into your journey. You don't need to. The results speak louder than excuses. Let them live in hypotheticals while you live in reality. Let them talk about what they could do while you keep showing them what you are doing. Because at the end of the day, history doesn't remember excuses, it remembers results. And here's the ultimate truth. If someone really could have done what you did, they still can. They can start today. They can make the sacrifices, put in the work and go after it. But most won't. They'll keep talking about what they could do, instead of actually doing it. That's the difference between dreamers and doers, between jealous people and achievers. You belong to the latter. So the next time someone tells you, I could have done that too if I wanted, smile. Because what they're really saying is, I didn't have the courage to do what you did. Let their words remind you that you chose action over excuses. You chose commitment over comfort. You chose to live in reality, not hypotheticals. And that's why you're standing where you are, and they're still stuck where they've always been. Don't forget where you came from. At first it sounds like wisdom. It sounds like a reminder to stay grounded, to remember your roots, to carry humility with you as you rise. And in its purest form, it can be that. Staying connected to your journey, being grateful for where you started, that's powerful. But let's be honest, that's not usually the way jealous people use it. More often, those words aren't spoken with love. They're spoken with bitterness. They're not meant to remind you of your strength, but to guilt trip you for your growth. You've probably heard it. After reaching a new level in life, you graduate, get a better job, move to a new city, or start making choices that don't fit the old version of you. And suddenly someone says, don't forget where you came from. And in that moment, you know they're not really asking you to stay humble. What they're really saying is, don't outgrow me. Don't make me feel small by becoming bigger than what I'm comfortable with. It's not about your roots. It's about their fear of being left behind. Here's the truth. People who are jealous of your progress often use guilt as a weapon. They know they can't stop your growth directly, so they try to pull on your emotions instead. They frame your ambition as betrayal, your success as arrogance, your independence as abandonment. By saying, don't forget where you came from, they're trying to anchor you to the past, so you feel wrong for stepping into the future. It's their way of saying, stay here with us, in the place we've chosen to remain, so we don't have to feel the discomfort of watching you rise. But let's look closer. What does where you came from actually mean? It means the struggles you overcame, the lessons you learned, the environment that shaped you. Those things are important, they deserve respect, but they are not a prison. They are not chains meant to keep you bound forever. Growth doesn't erase your past, it honors it. Every step forward is proof that where you came from didn't define you, it refined you. And anyone who truly cares about you will celebrate that. Jealous people twist this because they can't face their own stagnation. If you're moving forward while they stay stuck, it highlights the gap between you and them. Instead of asking, how can I grow too? They'd rather drag you back down with guilt. So they weaponize nostalgia. They say things like, remember when you were just like us, or you think you're better now, or don't forget who you used to be. It's not about keeping you grounded, it's about keeping you small. But here's the irony. They only say it when you've leveled up. Nobody tells you, don't forget where you came from when you're struggling. Nobody says it when you're broke, lost, or uncertain. They say it when you're shining. They say it when you finally made progress that they can't deny. That should tell you everything you need to know. Their words aren't about your humility. They're about their jealousy. Now here's where it gets tricky. If you're not careful, you might let that guilt seep in. You might start questioning yourself. Am I being arrogant? Am I abandoning people? Am I forgetting my past? That's the trap. They want you to believe that growth equals betrayal, but it doesn't. Growth isn't about leaving people behind, it's about refusing to stay stuck in places that no longer serve you. It's about breaking cycles, creating opportunities, and becoming more than your circumstances. If others choose not to grow, that's their choice. It doesn't mean you have to stop. Imagine a tree. It starts as a seed in the soil. The soil is where it came from. But if that tree listened to people saying, don't forget where you came from, and decided to stay underground forever, it would never grow. Does the tree dishonor the soil by breaking through it and reaching for the sun? No. It honors it by fulfilling its purpose. In the same way you don't dishonor your beginnings by growing beyond them, you honor them by showing what's possible. So how do you handle it when someone throws that phrase at you? You don't argue, you don't shrink yourself to make them feel comfortable. You simply live in a way that proves you've never forgotten where you came from. You've simply refused to stay there. You can remember your roots without being trapped by them. You can be grateful for your past while still building your future. You can love people without letting their fear hold you back. And let's be clear, you're not responsible for carrying other people's insecurities. You don't owe anyone guilt just because they chose not to grow. True friends, true family, true supporters will never try to use your past as a weapon against you. They'll remind you of your beginnings with love, not bitterness. They'll celebrate how far you've come instead of resenting it. They'll be inspired, not threatened. Those are the people worth keeping close. The rest, let them talk. Because at the end of the day, don't forget where you came from isn't always a warning. It can be a reminder. But the reminder isn't to stay stuck. It's to stay humble, to stay grateful, to never lose sight of how far you've come. It's to carry your lessons with you, not your limitations. The jealous will use it to guilt trip you. The wise will use it to remind you of your strength. And the choice is yours, which meaning you give it. So the next time someone says, don't forget where you came from, pause, ask yourself, are they trying to lift me or hold me back? If it's guilt, let it go. If it's love, take it with you. Either way, keep moving forward. Because the greatest way to honor where you came from is to keep growing, to keep breaking barriers, to show others that their beginnings don't have to be their endings. And if anyone tries to use your past to make you feel guilty about your future, remember this: you don't owe anyone an apology for growing. Your success doesn't mean you've forgotten your roots. It means you've watered them and they've grown into something greater. You're not betraying where you came from. You're proving that where you came from wasn't the limit. It was just the starting line. When you really look at the words jealous people throw at you, you got lucky, it's not that big of a deal, must be nice, I could have done that too, don't forget where you came from. You see a pattern. None of those words are about you. They're about them. They're about people trying to protect their egos, hide their insecurities, and make themselves feel better in the shadow of your growth. They're not statements of truth. They're reflections of envy. And here's the danger. If you're not careful, you'll start carrying their projections as if they're facts. You'll start questioning yourself, minimizing your progress, and shrinking so others don't feel small. That's how jealousy wins. Not by stopping you, but by convincing you to stop yourself. But you have a choice. You can let their words become chains that hold you back, or you can let them become fuel that pushes you forward. You can let you got lucky, remind you that you worked harder than they ever imagined. You can let it's not that big of a deal, remind you to celebrate every step no matter how small. You can let must be nice, remind you that you've built a life worth noticing. You can let I could have done that too, remind you that talk is cheap and action is everything. And you can let don't forget where you came from, remind you that your past is your foundation, not your cage. At the end of the day, jealous people will always talk. But history doesn't remember what they said, it remembers what you did. Your results will always speak louder than their excuses. Your growth will always outshine their bitterness. And your future will always matter more than their opinions. So the next time you hear those words, don't get angry, don't get defensive, and don't get discouraged. Smile, because every jealous comment is proof that you're moving, proof that you're rising, proof that you've touched a level that others can't ignore. Their envy is the echo of your success. And you don't stop walking just because someone else can't keep up. Keep growing, keep building, keep shining, because the best response to jealousy is not revenge, not bitterness, not even explanation. It's success, so undeniable that no amount of words can ever erase it. That is your power. Own it, protect it, and never ever give it away.